It is my pleasure now to introduce the next facilitator, who is Tara Stafford Ocansey, the Executive Director of the Children's Environmental Literacy Foundation. Tara drives the organization's program strategy, partnership cultivation, and development efforts to deliver teacher professional development and student experiential learning programs to K-12 school communities in New York, Texas, California, and more. Tara joined CELF after a decade with the Center for Sustainable Development at Columbia University, where she was a dear colleague of mine back at one time. She facilitated teams across the globe to identify, advocate for, and implement strategic approaches to creating a more sustainable future through increased access to lifelong learning opportunities for all. Tara has collaborated with diverse stakeholders from government to nonprofit, corporate, academic, and grassroots organizing sectors. Tara, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here with you all, and thank you for that kind welcome. So we are just so pleased. I'm so grateful to be here with all of these incredible panelists that we have convened today. And we're excited to discuss and explore what learning looks like and can look like in this age of climate uncertainty. The summit sessions so far today have been just so full of insights and hope for ways that we can all collaborate to scale integration of education for sustainability and global citizenship and all the other good stuff outlined in SDG 4.7 across the lifelong learning spectrum. And with this session, we're hoping that we're going to drill down to some specific examples of programs that are engaging directly with K-12 educators and students to embed climate change education and education for sustainability in ways that elevate student voice and choice. This panel is focused on learning in the age of climate uncertainty because we know that young people are increasingly struggling with eco-anxiety and climate anxiety. There was a Lancet study that came out toward the end of 2021 that looked at 10,000 16 to 25-year-olds and found that nearly 60% of them responded saying that they felt very worried or extremely worried about climate change. But we also know that young people are very curious about solutions that they know are already out there, and they're eager to be part of mobilizing that grassroots support that's needed to put those solutions in place at scale. And in our work with the Children's Environmental Literacy Foundation, we see every day that when teachers are supported with tools and techniques to embed these education for sustainability and civic science concepts across subjects in ways that are rooted in students' place and in their lived experience, that students become empowered to be those civic scientists that can go out there and get the data and the analysis to inform those solutions and advocacy strategies to take those solutions forward. So I'm just thrilled to be here today with this panel to dive into some of these examples for how we can translate some of that concern that young people have into those empowering actions that can help us all work together to co-create that sustainable and equitable future. So we'll be doing a round robin. We'll hear from our four change agent panelists who will each share for a few minutes about their work. So we'll have everyone share for those few minutes, and then we'll follow up with a couple questions from me and then open it up to our Zoom community here for all of your questions. So please jot down any questions that come to mind as our panelists are speaking, or feel free to drop them in the chat, and then we'll discuss after we hear from everyone. So first, I'd like to introduce Maggie Favretti, and give me a moment to just share a slide here. So Maggie Favretti is an author and award-winning teacher who conspires with young learners and colleagues from around the world to democratize and deepen learning and to build agency for transformative systemic change-making. In her new book, Learning in the Age of Climate Disasters, Empowering Teachers and Students Beyond Future Phobia, Maggie outlines the context and causes of future phobia and then offers regenerative learning strategies rooted in nature's principles for well-being. She asked the question, what if nature designed our school systems? She also explores methods for co-empowering youth creativity, agency, and hope. Maggie's next steps include Earth and Indigenous rights advocacy and helping to further global healing through emancipatory and regenerative learning and civic action ecosystems. She plans to keep asking, what kind of ancestor will I be? What a great question. So thanks so much, Maggie, and I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. I hope everybody can hear me okay. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see, this is what I want. Share. go to present. So in the fall of 2017, I had the privilege, after about 33 years of teaching, really hands-on, deeply engaged teaching. I was a history teacher, but I always said I taught people and not history, trying to have them do history and be deeply engaged in civic change and participation in their own communities. I had started developing I had developed a class in community resilience. As a result, the American Superintendents Association asked me to go to Puerto Rico right after the double hurricanes there. And they really taught me to refine my thinking about climate anxiety, because it's so much more than anxiety. I think we all understand that now. And what I learned in Puerto Rico is that all of those very powerful feelings that we associate with climate now, grief and guilt and betrayal, if you're in a group of people and you ask them to raise their hands if they feel these feelings, they definitely do. And then if you ask them if they're feeling optimistic, they sit on their hands. And if you ask them why, they mostly say it's because they don't feel like there's anything they can do about it. And we know that that is also one of the causes of trauma. And these feelings of not being able to do anything about this, and the inequality and oppressions that we are living with already, plus the impacts of climate change, have resulted in a kind of collective trauma, as well as personal trauma, that results in disengagement, fatalism, or fighting like mad and then burning out, all of which taken together I call future phobia in my book. Let me just see here how I can get to my next slide. Come on. There we go. So the climate crisis is, of course, a culture crisis, and education has been sitting on the bench in general, not always. But typical public schools have not been engaged in helping young people to reconnect to their own roots of alignment with nature, the roots of their own power, and instead have been prepping for standardized tests or colonial education models and so on. And these, I'm saying it like maybe it's easy to do. These narratives are huge and powerful that are driving our planet to and our species to extinction. So how do we get away from those narratives? It's really tough. UNESCO issued in the fall of 2021 an imperative to all education institutions to stop business as usual, and instead to focus on inequality, climate change, fragmentation, and struggling democracies. So many schools and states and universities have been trying to deal with the mental health crisis that goes along with oppressions, the mental health crisis that's magnified by the climate crisis, the mental health crisis that has been magnified by COVID, by adding on to teachers and schools more initiatives, which are simply multiplying the fragmentations and getting us to a situation of overwhelm. So what I suggest in my book, and I'll be happy to talk about it a little bit more later, is that we focus on two things, and they're related, since everything is related. One is to regenerate our idea of schooling by imagining what if nature designed our schools. And then the other is, once we get to that stage, how can we tap into the very special powers that nature has given us as human beings to act with agency among all of our relations? So this is the big question. And if we stop and think about what healthy, natural living ecosystems look like, we would find certain characteristics, even though every ecosystem looks different in every different place. There are certain characteristics that are characteristics of life and living systems. So you might end up with learning systems whose measure of success, just as in healthy ecosystems, is holistic well-being and everything that comes with that: mutual relationships, diversity as the special sauce secret sauce of success, and regeneration, regenerativity. In other words, creating the conditions for more life and much more diffuse kind of power within that. So I'm going to stop there because I've gone beyond my time limit already, but I have more slides in case anybody would like to know more about what we've done.
Well, my curiosity is surely piqued, and we will definitely make some time during the conversation to hopefully dig into some more of your slides and see some more of those examples.
Thanks, Tara. I can't wait to hear from everybody else.
Thank you. So I'm just going to introduce our next speaker now. We have Michelle Blanchet. And Michelle is an educational consultant that infuses startup strategies into professional learning so that teachers are empowered to bring change-making, social innovation, and SDGs into their work. After teaching social studies in both the US and Switzerland, she founded the Educators Lab, which supports teacher-driven solutions to educational challenges. And Michelle is the co-author of the Startup Teacher Playbook and Preventing Polarization: 50 Strategies for Teaching Kids About Empathy, Politics, and Civic Responsibility. She has worked with organizations like PBS Education and Ashoka, and occasionally blogs for Edutopia. A graduate of IE University in Madrid, she is a part of the global shaper community of the World Economic Forum and has presented at numerous events, including South by Southwest and TEDx. Her focus: agility in education, gamifying civics, and green career pathways. So Michelle, we'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. I'm going to try to get my slides up quickly. And as usual, my computer seems to be shutting down when under pressure. Okay. Great. Am I sharing? It is not. Sorry.
Yes, that looks good, Michelle.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to go ahead and share like this then. Yeah, so my introduction has been said, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about what we've done specifically related to sustainability and working with schools on this. So one of the first ways that we kind of got involved with sustainability is simply through our work with the Startup Teacher Playbook. So as I mentioned, I'm a former teacher. I noticed we had a lot of room in the professional learning space to be more agile. And what I wanted to see was a space where we could be supported to work on ideas that we believed matter. Therefore, fortunately, I've had a lot of experience in the social startup world, and that enabled me to see things like the business model canvas and lean startup, design thinking, et cetera. So we went ahead and created some of our own variations on this so that we could create a space for educators to work on how they might do things like bring the SDGs in the classroom or create opportunities for students to work on initiatives with sustainability. For us, we've noticed one of the biggest challenges is just space, time, and support. Teachers that are already interested in this really just need a chance to work through ideas and figure out what's the best way to embed some of these themes into their curriculum in a way that works. They need a chance to think through how they might leverage community partnerships. I mean, even a field trip. I mean, if you've ever planned one, this is hours of extra time. So really, that's what we've noticed. And so for us, this educator canvas is a way for teachers. It's just a set of guiding questions so that teachers could think through, what their goals are, what they want to do with students so that they create some sustainable initiatives. And not to say we always get it right, but it is a chance for teachers to try. And I think that's what we need right now. I don't think anyone has the solutions. And as Maggie said, I think the key to hopelessness is action, and people want to be able to do things. And this is a way as well for teachers to practice active learning, and therefore they're more likely to do it with their students. So when they're empowered to, materialize their own ideas, they're more likely to take those to the classroom. So that's one concrete way we've kind of gotten started with some change maker work and getting people started on their own sustainability journeys. The second thing was on this book, Preventing Polarization. This book's really about social emotional learning and why we need to think about social emotional learning when we think about civic engagement. I think one of the points, or for me, a key purpose of school is to ensure our students are engaged citizens. And we can only get so far in our sustainability journeys if we don't vote in leaders who care about this. And I think we really need to make sure that students understand that their voice matters and that their vote matters. And so this is a reason this topic, I think, is really important when we think about sustainability. By the way, when we talk about social emotional learning, I've taught civics. I've taught it in Virginia, which seems to get in the news a lot. And just teaching kids things like the Electoral College, they get upset. It is an emotional topic. So as much as sometimes you get told to just teach the curriculum, kids have feelings. So I think that we need to do a better job of giving kids the opportunity to discuss relevant and real issues, to deal with ambiguity. And I showed some things. We tend to use games as a way to help kids be able to practice expressing themselves, communicating, being tolerant towards one another, and of course, exploring the issues that matter. And this is where I think sustainability comes into play. So that's kind of a second way where we've been kind of trying to hit and on how we might support our students on their sustainability journeys. And then the final way is a greener future of work. I've been doing a bit of work with Getting Smart. We've also been promoting the work of Generation 180. This is on a few fronts, and I'll cover these 3 bullet points. So number one, the Inflation Reduction Act offered a huge opportunity. I think as schools, we need to ask ourselves if we're contributing to student success, not only in what we teach them, but in how we operate. So I think we have about 10% of schools right now in the US that have converted to solar. There are a lot more. We can do a lot more. I think only 1% have converted over to electric buses. I think there's a lot of money to do that. Clean infrastructure is great because number one, it enables schools to save money. So there tends to be a lot more buy-in when we talk about how we get started on the sustainability journey. Money tends to talk. The other thing, once the clean infrastructure is there, it can lend itself to more opportunities. So if you're already installing solar panels, it's easier to create curriculum around renewable energy or create a CT or a career and technical. For those who don't know the acronym, it's career technical education. It's easier to create those kind of opportunities so students get exposed to that. Not only does that help students just have an understanding of renewable energy so they might make better consumer choices as adults, but it's also a way not only to offer a direct career path, and I can go on a lot about future jobs. We already know that green jobs are coming, and we're going to have exponential growth in quite a few categories. And not only is this though, sometimes when we talk about, CTE and solar or just green CTE, we might focus on something like solar, but beyond that, companies are asking for this. Green skills are going to disrupt most professions, so we need to make sure that we're ensuring our students have a climate literacy so that they're competitive. So I don't care if they go into banking, nursing. I mean, most like if you look at a lot of MBAs, they have a sustainability component. Companies want this; they know they need it, so it's important. And then finally, I think with kind of a greener future of work, if we talk about this, is really thinking about community partnerships and what that looks like. It's different in different areas. We were able to host a chat. And it was really interesting. In Philadelphia, their energy authority was able to make a connection with Philadelphia Public Schools, and they had a CTE program. And, it's a way to connect students to those sort of jobs in the future. Whereas we had someone from Denver Public Schools come, and they might be getting started on CTE, but as far as like career partnerships, they might not have that yet. But I wanted to note them because What was interesting is the reason that sustainability director was hired was because students pushed for it. So when we think about a greener future of work, the jobs are there. So I don't know who starts it. I don't know if we need more students and teachers pushing and saying, we need this, we need a sustainability director, we need someone who's going to help ensure that our infrastructure is good, and that we have opportunities to learn about this stuff. But the opportunity is there, and I think these conversations are happening, and I wanted to highlight that. And those are the three main things I'm working on in these areas. So happy to chat further about those. And hopefully I didn't go too over time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was great. I really appreciate your note that every job can be a green job. And indeed, every job should become a green job and have that layer to it. So thank you so much. I'm going to just go back to my slides again here briefly and introduce our next speaker, who is Manuela Zamora. So Manuela has been the executive director of New York Sunworks, which is an award-winning educational nonprofit since 2012. Manuela is a native of Bolivia, where she had extensive experience in sustainable development projects. As the director of NY Sunworks, she has worked to provide hands-on sustainability, science, and climate education for NYC students through the installation and operation of hydroponic science labs and farm classrooms, and the accompanying standards-based K-12 curriculum, building over 250 plus public school partnerships across the 5 boroughs in metropolitan New Jersey. Manuela is a tireless advocate for robust sustainability education for our next generation of science innovators and leaders, most recently sitting on the food policy transition team for New York City Mayor Eric Adams. She has also presented before the U.S. House of Representatives Sustainable Energy and Environment Coalition, the World Environmental Education Conference in Prague, and the North America Association for Environmental Education Conference in Tucson. So I'll turn it over to you, Manuela. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here and with the challenge of sharing my screen right now. So I'll do that first. I guess this. Is it sharing? Oops, share. Hold on. Then you see there you go. And I need to go to slides, right?
It's working.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's working, right? Because I can't see how much I'm sharing. I just see you. All right. So New York Sunworks is a not-for-profit organization, as you've heard before, that brings hydroponic farming technology into the public school classroom. So we enter the classroom and the school community through as a science program, but we bring together sustainability, science, and climate education. So the goal is that becomes part of the daily instruction and the daily curriculum of every school that we work with. We envision a generation of environmental innovators empowered to create solutions to the climate challenges. As we mentioned before, we started in 2010 with one program. I went too fast. With this first lab, one program at a public school, and 12 years later, we're very happy to be in 250 public schools in the 5 boroughs. Most of our communities are underserved communities. Almost 80% are Title I schools. And therefore, it's even more relevant to bring science and sustainability and climate education to those communities. So we're currently the largest foremost comprehensive climate education program in New York City. We've reached this past year 100,000 students. And we're going to surpass that this year. We're very happy to reach that goal. And we're currently in 250 schools. We'll reach 300 by December. It's happily all funded, and we're moving forward to reach those communities. We started with the greenhouse classroom model, which is obviously too expensive and not necessarily replicable, but some of those greenhouses already exist, so therefore we retrofit those spaces and turn them into classrooms. But what really works is bringing what we call the classroom conversion, transforming in any space into an urban farm with commercial level technology and providing the students an exposure to different design and different type of equipment that is designed for specific purposes, vine crops or leafy greens or fish farms in this case, etc. So it really the design is really is guided based on the needs of the school, the size of the school, and other aspects of the specific community. This is a great example of how a classroom looks like, and we design in a way that students are embedded. They are part of the actual farm, and with that, we provide as a comprehensive K-12 science curriculum that meets the science standards. So this subject has been discussed throughout the day, how to make it part of how to make it easier for the teacher to teach. So we are at training the trainer model. We work with the school teachers, and the teachers will pass and teach the curriculum to their students. So every element of the classroom really has a connection to the science standards, and with that, an extension to basically why are we doing this? Why are we thinking differently? Why are we bringing this technology into the classroom? Why urban farming and hydroponics and all these novelties that were not very known in the past? And that's really the connection to sustainability and more specifically to climate education. So we're not only filling the gaps in science, because in New York City, I'm not familiar with other states' curriculums, but science is not necessarily mandatory until 7th grade. So it's very important for us to work with those teachers and bring science since kindergarten and introducing these more complex topics and connections through the practice of farming. So basically, the students will learn from seed to harvest, and they will make specific connections to the needs. So a quick example is first graders will learn about insects. So how about learning about integrated pest management and how ladybugs are beneficial to us, and they eat aphids while we're having these, pest invasions in the classroom. So you can picture the endless connections that we find every grade. And the curriculum covers an entire year per grade. So it's really providing all that the teacher needs to teach in that type of classroom. As you can imagine, we have hundreds of pounds of vegetables available, and it's a wonderful byproduct and also very important byproduct of the science program, but it's really very important to the communities. And with that, we developed not only, sorry, I'm gonna go back to our harvest program, which is a way to distribute all the crops to the communities, to the schools, to the students themselves, so they take them home. And we use what is called funds of knowledge. So we have an activity so the students can bring their cultures and the funds of knowledge from home into the classroom. We also develop a workforce development program, a work to bridge, these learning and these technologies into the possibilities for students to connect into new careers. All these elements that were discussed and presented already before me, and within this context, we really see other elements in the classroom. Of course, improve eating just by having access to delicious, fresh, and nutritious food, but also very important outcomes in terms of social emotional learning, a safe space and empowerment for girls participating in STEM, among many other outcomes that we have in the program. So wrapping it up because I'm over time. We're open to new ideas and to continue growing, but we're very happy to have developed this model and share with all of you as something that's been working in such a vibrant and also diverse community that we have in New York City. Thank you. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Manuela. I So just compelling and inspiring, and I just love that you bring the funds of knowledge into how the harvests are used, so the students can see a bit of themselves in what they're doing, and have that motivation for that delicious meal that they'll be able to cook at the end of everything.
Thanks.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen one more time to introduce our last panelist. So finally, we have Katherine Peterson Blanchard. She's currently the Assistant Division Director of Professional Services at the Smithsonian Science Education Center. In this role, she leads educational initiatives across the United States and around the world. Katherine works with teachers, schools, districts, and communities to build support for science and STEM education that intersects with social issues and sustainable development, and directs the Network for Emergent Socio-Scientific Thinking. She is passionate about connecting people who are doing this work across geographic borders, disciplines, and generations. During her time at the SSEC, Katherine has led professional development workshops, leadership institutes, and has worked on the development of new initiatives, including the Smithsonian Science for Global Goals project. Prior to joining the SSEC in 2012, Katherine worked in theater production for companies in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and Belgrade, Serbia, and was a Fulbright Fellow at the University of Belgrade. She holds a BA in theater and political science from Coe College and an MA in international education from the George Washington University. We're so happy to have you with us, Katherine, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Tara. It's lovely to be here. And thank you to all of my fellow presenters. It was wonderful to learn a little bit about the work that you do. So I am going to add some visual aids. Can everyone see that? Yes. Does that look ridiculously small to all of you? Does it look okay? All right. Okay, great. As Tara mentioned, my name is Katherine Blanchard, and I am here at the Smithsonian. And I am assuming some of you have been to the Smithsonian and know that we're a great big institution based in Washington, DC. We are particularly unique in that we bring together science, art, history, culture, and education, and catalyze critical conversations and actions around our shared future, both as Americans here in the United States, but also globally in terms of our shared future and life on our sustainable planet, or some of the other kind of social issues that my colleagues around the Smithsonian grapple with as well. The Smithsonian Science Education Center, however, is particularly unique because we're the only group at the Smithsonian that focuses on doing this in the K-12 or primary and secondary education space. We're focused on transforming education through a lens of science in collaboration with communities around the globe. We promote active inquiry-based K-12 STEM education and learning. We focus on diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion in STEM. And we advance STEM education for sustainable development, or STEM for SD, which is the acronym that we use for that at this point in time. So in 2016, as we all learned about the Sustainable Development Goals, we had this opportunity to think about what do we want our shared future to be as an organization, as a people, as a globe, and what particularly could the Smithsonian Science Education Center bring to that. So in looking at these beautiful 17 messy goals, the theme that we saw throughout them is that young people will need an understanding of science in order to help us take action on these. And not only young people, but adults as well. But I happen to work directly with young people. And so in doing that, it's not just about being able to know the science, but it's about how you kind of build your mindsets around them. So with that, we built a framework called the Sustainability Mindsets. And these are an approach that we take to helping young people really kind of think towards that shared transformative future. So agency and action taking is really the belief that personal and collective action can lead to positive change. Our reflection and open-mindedness is understanding different perspectives and contexts for knowledge. Relationships and interconnection are focusing on connections between systems, places, people, nature, and times. And then equity and justice is honoring the intrinsic value that all living things, their identities and the world around us. And finally, that shared transformative future sits at the center. Together, these 4 mindsets help to move us towards this idea of a transformative goal of a imagined society that's better than the one we have now. And it's not your job or my job necessarily to plot out what that's supposed to look like, because it is ever evolving, and our young people are part of the drivers that make that a reality. So our approach, this graphic looks a little like the last one, but sideways, is focused on kind of 4 main areas. One is on co-constructing our Smithsonian Science for Global Goals guides that are aligned to those UN Sustainable Development Goals, and use a framework that we call the Global Goals Action Progression to help students really get to the point of being able to take action on big global issues in their own local communities. To better support students in taking this step, we also provide professional development that supports educators to take a transdisciplinary approach to teaching that aligns to modern student needs, that also kind of reframes their role as an educator from the sage on the stage who knows all the things to someone who's co-creating, constructing knowledge with their students, who's working to really think of themselves as a facilitator and not having to have all the answers, and also not having to have necessarily all those burdens that Maggie spoke about earlier as well. If you look over on the right side, our systemic transformation is really focused on collaborating with schools, districts, ministries of education to design education systems that meet student and educator needs now, not that are designed for a 19th century population, but instead are really focused on how we move forward in our education communities. And the last piece of this is the network that brings this all together. So connecting passionate, invested individuals and organizations and catalyzing global conversations about this work is a really important piece of doing this on a global setting, not just in our own individualized communities, and being able to kind of build that empathy that goes beyond just the people that we know on an everyday basis to others around the world. I'm almost done here. So the main kind of piece, the keystone, if you will, of this work are Smithsonian Science for Global Goals guides. These are freely available for download, designed for students ages 11 to 18, that we have seen them used with students as young as 5 and 6. They're optimized for accessibility needs, and they're really modularized to help educators be able to kind of take what they need that serves their students' needs as well. They feature really great social and emotional supports, a focus on themes like resilience, community building, understanding and learning from your ancestors and those who are in your community whom we might not hear from as often. Just to give you kind of an idea of the depth and breadth of this work, we've reached 2.8 million students since 2016, and 30,000 educators have been trained in 88 countries. And so with that, I will turn it back to Tara to give us a little move on to our next phase.
Thanks so much, Katherine. That is so inspiring. I know our team will definitely be digging into some of those resources that you have available, and I think there'll be a lot of tie-ins to our work as well. And I know we don't have a ton of time left, and I want to make sure we have time for questions from the rest of our participants here. So I'll ask kind of one question that I think applies to all of your work to start. And I think, the past couple of years, teachers have just been dealing with so many compounding challenges, shifted learning trajectories, coming out of the pandemic, if we can say that, teacher shortage crisis. To Maggie's point, there's so many different initiatives that teachers are trying to juggle, all well-intentioned. So in your work, what do you find to be some of those key success factors to really help teachers take up some of this work and embed it into their core teaching practice? If you can share any examples, we'd love to hear a bit more about those key success factors. And that's for any one of you. Maggie.
Yeah, I could go a little bit. I think that it would be hard for me to find teachers in a more climate impacted area than in Puerto Rico. And they are working very, very hard simply to meet all of the expectations, but they're very intensively fragmented from each other, students from nature. The curriculum is divided into different disciplines so that when and if they're teaching about environmental issues or about climate change, it's almost always in a science class. And so students feel that they are really not getting what they need, and the teachers feel like they're not doing everything that they could be doing, but they themselves are traumatized by the situation in which they are teaching. So here's one of the things that we did, that we also did this with recognition that teachers themselves may not be comfortable in nature. So, that feeling like, how am I going to do this? Right? Like, I have to take my kids outside, but wait a minute, we live in the city. All of these kinds of issues. And so there was recognition that among the teachers that they really needed more educator learning, even though there are great examples around the world that they could look at. So we invited them, their students actually invited them to go to the woods. And together they explored, they discovered, as on the left, that they didn't have a cell connection. They had to work with students to figure out how to put up a tent. But also they discovered amazing things like mushrooms they had never seen before and things they wanted to take back to class to look at. And in this environment, here were some of the comments that they made. They were really learning how to reconnect with nature themselves. And once the teachers felt they could do that, then they felt that they could bring it back to their schools and their communities and really work to develop agency in the students by tapping into the powers that the students already had. And so there are some really magical things that grew out of that forest encounter. And here's another one of the quotes that I didn't want to miss. They began seeing opportunities to think and work in this regenerative way as they went forward. And one of them said he realized that regenerative learning is not adding to the curriculum, it is the curriculum, and the curriculum is life itself. I'll just stop there because I could go on like I did in my book.
We'll have to check that out. Very powerful. Thank you. I want to give some space for Manuela to speak, and then Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you. In our case, as a community support organization, we provide what Michelle actually mentioned before, which are those two things: space, time, and support. So we create the classrooms in partnership and helping the school to get the funding. The school doesn't have to have the funding, so that's part of our work. But we give a lot of time to the teachers. We give teacher training, extensive teacher training, and an entire year of support, so the program can be sustainable and established within the school culture. And we remain in partnership with schools, sometimes 8 years, as long as is needed, because the time is important. And of course, that goes with the support in terms of the lessons ready, a team of curriculum specialists we have that they work hand in hand with our teachers, but also specialists in how to manage the technology and how to manage the excitement of the kids when they enter the classroom.
I love that. It resonates a lot with our work itself as well, where we really have those long-term relationships with schools that we work with over many years, and always trying to find those opportunities to fundraise, in partnership with them so they can get access to those resources. Thank you. Michelle.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed that I feel like tends to work really well is before, if I do a kind of agile workshop, I usually ask teachers to go have a conversation with their students first, because teachers do have a lot on their plate, but usually we went in because we want to make a difference. And I have 100% kids first policy because that helps you to prioritize, what's the most important. And so I think sometimes just taking that step back and asking kids like, what do you care about? What makes you angry or what's bothering you? Because that usually is something they care about. But they might not express it that way yet. And then also, if they feel like they have the power to do something, a lot of kids will usually say no. So sometimes some of your starting point might be in helping kids to kind of empathize with themselves, see what their strengths are. And I think, because I think that's the thing, when we learn about sustainability but don't feel confident in themselves yet, they're not likely to feel empowered to take action. So for me, that's just a starting point, is having a conversation with your students and seeing where they're at, because I think that'll help guide you on what you should probably do for your students, where your starting point is.
And I'll just kind of echo what Michelle said, if that's okay, Tara, but the idea that, this is the work that we do is really student driven. So we're not asking a teacher to plot out what sustainability project they want to work on. We're asking them to, pick one of our guides, which is a big theme that could do a lot of different things, like biodiversity, that could mean anything in the natural world, and ask your students to actually investigate those things and learn about it. So we're not only asking our students what's important to them, but then we're asking them to reflect on what they're seeing in their own community and in their own natural space as well, and being able to integrate that new knowledge into that sort of decision-making process. And that, for us, on a very local level, right, that's really that student-driven approach. On kind of a larger level, for us who are, creating these guides and also kind of doing professional development and supporting school districts, it's also focused on really making sure that things can be localized and customized based on the needs of a location. And so, our Sustainable Communities Guide, for instance, has been used all over the world. We've had success with students in Egypt and Argentina and here in the United States. And, there's so much opportunity for different students to engage in the same material in really different ways. And you're going to see some themes, but overarching is that, this is responsive to what our students need, but also what our communities need.
Thank you. That again resonates so much. In our program, we always start with kind of a community mapping exercise with the students to kind of understand what are those assets that they have, what are the things that they think they need, what are the issues they want to address, and then from there, how do you conduct research to kind of formulate a possible solution. I love that. I want to open it up to the rest of our participants here. If anyone has a question, I surely have plenty more I can ask, but let's give some space for any other questions our audience has. And feel free to come off mute and ask, or drop your question in the chat. Oh, here we go. From Sarah Lewis for Michelle. Do you see any potential specifically in climate and sustainability ed to help with the issue of polarization and helping kids connect across different perspectives and experiences, increase empathy, etc.?
So I don't even know where to start with this one. So I've heard from quite a few teachers, especially science and social studies. This is something where, for whatever reason, I'm in the US, climate is not an opinion issue, and it's being treated as one. And so depending, especially if you're in a polarized place, sometimes it's a matter of speaking with administration and helping them to understand, like, I'm an educator. My goal is for critical thinking and communication, and we're going to talk about this, not because it's an opinion, because this is, like virtually the entire international community has confirmed this, and we need to communicate that with parents. And I think when it's expressed why we're learning about things to parents, sometimes we're less likely to have the backlash. So for me, a starting point with addressing that sometimes is making sure that everyone's on the same page, so that you don't feel like you have to walk on the eggshells to even bring up certain issues, because it shouldn't be that way when it comes to climate and sustainability. So that's where my head went first. Let me know if that's helpful. If you're looking for something more specifically in the classroom, let me know. For that, I suggest games. There's a lot, like there's something called like the SDG game. There's a lot of different things that you can kind of play to help people, our students, even understand. I think sometimes it's not a matter of telling them, like, if they look at how climate patterns have changed over decades. I actually live in Switzerland. Have them go check out our ski resorts. Anything under 2,000 meters right now is really struggling, and it has been for decades. So they're really having to revamp look at their entire ski industry. If you have older kids as well, insurance companies have started taking note, because they're going to have to pay out now, on the impact of climate. So I think instead of always having to tell them, you can just engage them in projects where there's clear evidence on how climate is changing our world and how industries are having to adapt to that. And I think when they're able to explore these things themselves, it doesn't become a polarized issue. It becomes a learning opportunity, and they see for themselves the impacts. So
you can find allies sometimes depending on where the concerns are coming from in the community. Sometimes churches are great allies because of protecting God's creation and a whole host of other ways of thinking about this, that it's not a monolithic, opposition to talking about climate by any means. And so you can find allies in respected institutions who can also be allies in the work.
There's someone with their hand up.
Yes,
Elijah.
Elijah, do you have a question you'd like to ask our panel?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Elijah. I have one question that I want to ask, and then any panelist can also answer this question. So I'm from South Sudan. So I need to understand how can we initiate a sustainable development program curriculum into regional and country level, because we understand that we the people, we have a different curriculum that the people are using in regional in entire Africa or different with the Western world. So I need to understand, because I'm also a part of the education advocate for sustainable development program. I started this program since last year, and I'm trying my level best to initiate this program into the school level. And I'm getting a lot of challenging, a lot of questions on how can we initiating, and it's not reliable with a country curriculum. So this is a bit challenging to me and many students, and also the school are asking me, the government is questioning me. So a lot of things. So I need to understand this one. I need somebody who can help me more on this. So I think anybody who need to reach me, my email is there, and then can also reach to me, and then I will deliver more about this challenge that we are facing in South Sudan, in East African country. So this is my question and this is my concern. Thank you.
Katherine.
Yeah, absolutely. So Elijah, that's a great question. I think it's one that many of us who work in systemic spaces, whether that's on a local level or on a national or transnational level, are asking ourselves, is like, how do we actually make this a movement and not just sort of isolated incidences of really strong sustainability education? And so, there are, I think, many things that are kind of happening that can contribute to that kind of systemic approach towards this. One is that student-driven work. So if students are interested in this, if student voice is being given space, they will advocate for this. And that's something that we see over and over again. And this is really challenging from that sort of national level or, even like local district level, in that some of our most progressive places in the world who are really thinking about climate as a government, oftentimes the education policy lags behind that national policy. And so we're not seeing national standards of education necessarily reflecting this need. So, as our governments become more invested in climate action, there's an opportunity for education policy to follow suit, or in some cases to be a leader on that work, to say, this is important to our young people, this should be important to all of us, and this is what we need in order to make a difference in the future, not just right now. And so, Elijah, I'd be happy to talk to you. I put my email in the chat, and you can email me whenever you like.
Yes.
Email you. There's a lot of issues here in Africa. I'm going to share with you. Thank you very much. I got your email.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, I would be happy to be, I guess, looped in on the email and kind of brainstorm, because I'm a bit unclear on exactly, if there was an email, I'm a bit unclear on exactly some of the needs that you have, but there might be ways to connect with other organizations that are doing this. I was working with somebody at Ashoka, Nigeria, and it seemed there was, and I'm not sure if Sudan is a part of this, but there was some sort of education network that was unifying various countries in Africa. And apparently, if you went through this Department of Ed kind of organization, it was a bit easier to work with different universities and whatnot that were doing different things. So I'm not sure if this specific thing that I'm thinking of is relevant, but anyways, I would be happy if you wrote an email to see if there's a way to connect dots or connect you with other people that would know more than me in this space to see if that can be helpful.
Hi, Elijah. I also dropped my email in there, hbond@howard.edu. I'm the liaison there with the Center for African Studies at Howard University. It's just one of 10 centers funded by the US government and the State Department for African Studies, and Howard is the only HBCU. And so we'd love to talk with you because we're doing some sustainability work through that institute. So great.
Thank you. I will email you. I got your email. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. I'm also going to drop a link in the chat here in a moment to an organization I know of called the Green Africa Youth Organization that we partner with in Ghana, but they have presence in other parts of the continent as well. And they might be another helpful partner you might be able to reach out to. So thanks everyone for sharing those resources. And we're just about at the top of our hour. So do we have maybe any final thoughts, reflections from our panelists that you'd like to share? Or contacts, resources, anything else, feel free to drop them in the chat, and that goes for everyone.
Yeah, is the chat going to be saved and distributed? Because I'm having trouble saving chat here.
I will defer to our...
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. This has been so informative. I have so many more questions, so I hope I get a chance to speak with you all more and learn more from you. And I know that there'll be many opportunities for us to collaborate going forward. So I thank you all, and thank you to our organizers for organizing this wonderful summit, and looking forward to our final session for the day.
Thank you, Tara.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, everybody.